this. We are getting close to 99% sure the grades that are up there are correct. We do a lot of different checks. The TAs, they're going through, after everything's entered, we're going back and grading a few by hand just to make absolutely sure. So you can look on D2L now. You'll see your grade. I'm 90 to 99% sure that those will be the correct grades. And what we'll do is, by Monday, I'll feel much more confident, and we'll say, those are your grades. If you want to see your exams, see the TAs, and I'll post the answer key online, and we'll have an answer key with the TAs. And you can go and you can pull out your test. You can get your original Scantron. You can get your original hard copy. You can go through there and check it with the answer key. Make yourself as sure as you want to be that the grade is right, and ask all the questions you want. I just want, when you do that, I want the TA to be there too. I don't want you to take the stuff home and then bring it back to me, because, if you're willing to join the Nazi Party of Oklahoma, who knows what you've got to be willing to do to make the test look real when you change an answer, things like that. So that's what will happen with that. And eventually, but for exam 2, there's going to be a question where I give you a hypothetical situation. I say your homework average is this. Your exam 1 grade is this. Your paper grade is this. You attend 85% of classes. And I'm going to give you the formula for the class grade that's on the syllabus, and I'm going to say, what would your grade be for this class? And the reason is I want to make sure that if you pass this class, you can actually calculate your grade you would make for this class, given what you've done on the homeworks and things like that. So there will be a homework, and I've even got a spreadsheet up where you can go in and plug in your homework average, plug in your exam grades, and they'll tell you where you're sitting in this class right now. Whether it's 76, 96, it'll tell you. And I want you to be able to perform that calculation for yourself, because I want you to understand how the grades are calculated, especially given I have that little attendance thing, which is a little bit different. Don't have to do that now, but that is up if you're really curious about where you stand in the class right now. Does anybody know the day to drop the class by without a W? Or with a W? Someone who knows for sure, speak loud. Or not. It's online. If someone does look it up, just blurt it out when you find it. I try to have exam 1 done pretty early so you know where you're sitting in this class. And when is it? April 5th. There's another date, though, that's coming up. Maybe it's when you drop without the W. I want to say it's in 2 weeks. Monday. It'll be the 19th of April. Well, there is a, maybe I'll try to look up for Monday. There's some date when you can drop without a W, and I think that's in 2 weeks. The average grade on the test was a 75, which is very typical, and this is how it broke down. 15% of students got an A, which is 90 to 100. There was one student who got 100, very good. 39% of students got a D, 80 to 89. 23% of students got a C, 70 to 79. 15% of students got a D, 60 to 69. And 8% of students have a grade below 60, which is failing. And for those individuals, I highly stress that if you have a below 60, especially if you go in homeworks and you calculate your grade and you're below 60, really think about whether you want to stay in this class. Because at the end of the class, there's no curves or anything. If you're below 60 in the class, I give you an F. And I would much rather you drop the class if you think you just came through it this semester than have an A on your records. I hate giving A's. I'm sorry. I hate giving F's. Don't think you just got some insight into how my mind works. I don't have a subconscious. I killed that thing a long time ago. Any questions about this test or how we're going to handle letting you see the answers, answer key, anything? Remember that exam 1 will be familiar. most students higher than exam 2 and probably about the same you'll get on the final if you're a typical student. Your overall grade in the class is usually a little bit or maybe a little higher than your exam grades because you have attendance, which is 100 and can be as much as 10% in your grade. Homeworks, which usually students can do well, are also 10% of your grades. What we're going to do is continue where we left off. First, let me make sure there's no other announcements. Continuing on this thing about real and nominal interest rates and the story of the Great Depression, I believe we stopped on question 11 and didn't do it. And let me catch you up a little bit about what was going on. If I would take out your notes from last class, and we're just going to add to that. And do have your clickers ready. Channel 46 as always. Remember our story of Larry? Larry was 1929. He saw that farms were going bankrupt and the only way you could survive was to get big. And so he took out a loan to buy his neighbor's farm. When he took out the loan, they thought they expected inflation between 1930 and 1931 would be 0. And the banker wanted an 8% real interest rate, so we used this formula. We said, well, if the real rate that the banker wants is 8%, and if the expected inflation was 0, then the nominal rate, the actual interest rate on the loan, will equal the real rate of 8%. So Larry took out a loan of 8%. And then a number of things happened. We had a tariff, we had transporting gold, a decrease in the money supply, and inflation was not 0, inflation was negative 7%. So we had deflation of 7%. So what actually happened was that 8% nominal rate stayed the same, but over the course of the year, the nominal rate was 8%. The actual inflation was negative 7%. And when you use that formula to calculate what the real interest rate ends up being, I think we found it was 16%. So he thought he had a loan, he was going to have to pay back interest of 8%. It ended up being 16%. That was too much for Larry. And we did, 10 was the last one we did, I believe. And we talked about how this story about Larry is representative of a lot of farmers during the Great Depression. Not just poor farmers, but even the best of farmers. Did we complete number 11? Okay. Are y'all okay with just this one? I was going to write on the board, but tell me if you can't see. Here's our question. We want to know, why did Larry end up paying such a high interest rate? What mistake? What did they get wrong? Why was it so much higher than he thought it would be? Was it A, because there was significant deflation? B, because there was significant unexpected deflation? Or C, because there was no inflation? Chime in with your clickers to answer what you think is best. Remember, as we're doing clickers, you're not graded on your answers, but if you don't chime in at least once, I won't know you're here. Good. Y'all got it. What you recognize is that deflation isn't the problem. It was that it was unanticipated. And if they had known deflation was going to be 7%, then the nominal rate could have been changed and everything would have been fine. The real rate would have been 8%. So if I give you this true-false statement, does it sound more true or more false? From this, we learned that inflation/deflation mostly harms people when it is unexpected. Good. That's right. It really is expectations, that's the problem. And that is why when we say Ben Bernanke, our central bank, the Federal Reserve, they want price stability, they don't really want price stability. They want price predictability. They don't want prices to stay the same. They actually want inflation of about 3%. Their whole target, their means for existence, is to make sure inflation stays as close to 3% as possible. Because they don't think they can achieve stability, but they think they can achieve something like predictability. And so they burn money and they print money to try to make inflation, most of the time, about 3%. Because when it's 3%, or any percent, as long as we know what it can be, we can change nominal rates such that real rates are exactly what we want them to be. We can plan ahead when we know what inflation will be. And you aren't responsible for this, but I know a lot of this class we're talking about printing money, burning money, and it makes it sound like we're irresponsible. We're willing to do anything regardless of the consequence for prices. Meaning we're willing to risk a lot of inflation to be able to burn some money. And there's often this feeling that, well, the only way we can get price stability is if we get rid of this fiat money and go to gold money. You know, that's Ron Paul's big thing. We want to go to the gold standard. But think about what happened during the Great Depression. There was a gold standard. It was a gold standard tweaked and meddled with by the governments, but that's always going to happen. The government's always going to meddle with the money supply. And one of the big causes of the Great Depression was France hoarding money. And that was real gold they were hoarding. And we had unexpected deflation of 7%. So even if you go to the gold standard, if you go to a limestone wheel, if you use livestock as money, that doesn't mean you have price stability. You can actually have more instability in prices with gold money, any kind of commodity money, as you can fiat money. Most economists today believe we can better control inflation, make it more predictable, if we, meaning people like Ben Bernanke, get to decide how much money is out there, rather than leaving it up to how much gold we're going to discover next. Now, the Great Depression is a sad story. So we're imagining what's going to end up with Larry. We can imagine some sad endings. It might be like Grapes of Wrath, where they sell everything they can, they pile up what's left into a truck, and they say goodbye to the people in town, and the people never hear them again. Or it could be something as tragic as Larry not being able to deal with a life where he can give his family what he thinks he should be able to. And he can't deal with life, he kills himself. Leaving his wife and children alone. Like that picture which has become the symbol of the Great Depression. Now, bringing out this tragedy to show these real implications about money. When we're talking about money and MV equals PQ, this is real stuff. It has real consequence. One of the saddest times in American history was a time that was partly caused by poor management of money. And so this is very important. And it's important that you be able to understand these issues somewhat, so when you hear politicians, when you hear Rick Perry talking about people in Texas would hang Ben Bernanke, you can form some kind of opinion about that. Whether it's good or bad, knowing something is probably better than nothing. At least I hope. I want to try doing something different because I want to see if we can actually punch in numbers for a precise Like I'm asking you a question, I want you to give me a number. Let's just see how it works. Here's a hypothetical situation. And I'm actually moving us to the 1970s now, where something else happened. And the numbers here, again, are representative of what happened to real people. This is going to be important for you when you're thinking about how you save money for retirement. In 1970, ordinary people invested their savings, becoming lenders to governments and businesses. Whether you put your money in a bank, buy a CD, buy money market funds, buy stocks, buy bonds, government bonds, corporate bonds, anytime you invest money, what you really do is lending it to other people, just like a bank lends money to other people. The targeted real rate is 5%, meaning the market between buyers and sellers, the price they're negotiating is a real rate of 5%. But then they have to adjust that for inflation. What do they think inflation will be? It's 1970. They're looking ahead, and they say, well, in the last 2 years, inflation was about 2%. So I'm going to project throughout the 1970s that expected inflation is 2%. Now, based on that, let's calculate what the nominal interest rate would be. Then we use this formula. I'm giving you what expected inflation was, 2%. I'm telling you what the targeted real rate is, just 5%. Use your calculators, plug in a number, get the nominal rate, and then go ahead and enter that number in your clicker. See if you can get it to work. Like if it's 2.3, go to the clicker, hit 2, and period, and 3. Set that obvious. Start the timer. Tells us a lot of different answers that y'all gave up. I believe the answer that most of y'all gave was the right answer. 7.1 or 2.071. Yeah, the answer is 7.1%, which you would enter this, and this is something I should tell you with a question. The way you would enter it is 0.071. So 0.071. The market wanted a real rate of 5%. They thought inflation would be about 2%. So the nominal rate, the rate that people actually borrowed and lent, was 7.1%. And that was the interest rate that was charged on loans in the 1970s. But then let's see what actually happened. Because remember, in 1970, once that interest rate is set, it's set regardless of what happens with inflation. What actually happened was inflation was about 7.1%. We were very close to that, so that's not a typo. The nominal rate was 7.1%. Actual inflation was 7.1%. So we go to our equation, real rate, nominal rate minus actual inflation, divided by 1 plus actual inflation. And you get what the real rate is. You can actually do this without calculating. I'm gonna stop the timer. Did I do that too soon? Yeah, I apologize. Just don't look at the screen. Remember, it won't. You can still hold it. Yeah. Zero. Okay, yeah, here's the answer down here. Zero. You lend out money, meaning however much money you lend out, the nominal rate says you get back that plus that 1%. But each dollar is worth, so inflation was 7.1%. So even though you got like 7.1% more dollar bills, with that new money, after you repay, you can't buy any more stuff than you could have when you originally lent it out. Which means you get profit. Which means that people who did lend money during the 1970s and who saved it in very, what you would think, safe instruments, didn't earn any money. I mean, they kept their savings, but it didn't grow. So the answer is zero. And most of you got that very good. And this may be a more important story for you than the Great Depression. If you were going to save money for retirement or your children's college, and you wanted to be very safe, very responsible, and say, I'm not going to lose this money, you'd probably say, I'm not going to put it in the stock market. If you know what corporate bonds are, you'd probably say, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to just lend it to, say, the federal government or buy CDs at the bank. It is true that that is pretty safe and that the bank you bought a CD from is not going to go under. They're not going to go bankrupt. The U.S. government is not going to default, most likely. So you'll get your nominal interest rate back, but that's not what matters. It doesn't matter how many dollar bills you get back, it's how much stuff you can buy with those dollar bills. And investments that seem safe, as we saw in the 1970s, can be very risky if you have unexpected inflation. What happened to a lot of people in the 1970s, in 1970, they put their money in things like bank CDs or government bonds. And they put this thing, they put their money somewhere that they couldn't get it out for like 10 years. And it was locked in an interest rate like 7.1%. And then, remember what happened in 1971? We went off the gold standard. And we had some bills to pay. The Vietnam War was not cheap. And so basically what happened, the government was accumulating all this debt from the war, and the Fed started printing money. The Fed took that money and bought the debt from the government, which is basically printing money to pay the government's bills. And so you have a lot of inflation in the 1970s, and lots of people, the most responsible people in society who did everything right, lost everything. And I really mean lost everything. I saw this, it was in the editorial section of the Wall Street Journal. I think it sums it up very nicely. I want to read what it says. And this is about it's not about inflation in the 1970s, it's about unexpected inflation. To people who've worked their whole lives playing by the rules, that is, to the majority of adult Americans in the early 1970s, inflation at the hands of a wayward government policy seemed to be a betrayal. People who had been thriftiest watched down payments for buying a home disappear. College savings accounts shrunk. Retirement nest eggs vanished. The value of monthly pension checks shrink. Harvard Business School professional Samuel Hayes recounted the damage to a relative of his in a magazine store. He said, he was the epitome of the Protestant ethic. He had inherited money. He had saved. He was very frugal. He had a very modest house. Had part of his investment money in bonds and short-term securities. Had always maintained liquidity, meaning he could get his money back out. And he came out of the 70s looking like a fool. A fool for believing that you could invest your money in something, and if it says you'll get back 7%, you'll actually be able to buy 7% more stuff. Now, what does this mean for you? It doesn't mean you need to fear. What it means is that when you're handling your money, you have to manage two kinds of risk. One, you've got the risk like the risk you think of in the stock market. You buy a stock in a company, well, that company may go under and you lose on your stocks. So there's that risk in companies you invest in. There's that risk in the stock market, which we know has big ups and big downs. It's a roller coaster. But there's also the risk of unexpected inflation. Meaning you can't just say, I'm going to avoid the stock market. I'm going to avoid bonds. I'm going to put my money in savings accounts, certificates of deposit. Because there you run the risk that expectations about inflation will be wrong, and you'll see your savings disappear. So there's risk everywhere you look, but that's just luck. Doesn't mean you can't manage it. What I basically think, and the way I handle money, is I say, okay, when I go to invest money, and later in the semester we're going to actually really be talking about this. Let me just give you a hint. When I go to save money, and if I know I'm going to have my money invested for the next 10 years, 15 years, I put a lot of it in stocks. I put some of it in bonds, corporate bonds, and I may purchase some certificates of deposit. I may put some in a checking account, but only the money that I think I may need in the next 2 or 3 years. When it comes to something where I'm not going to take my money out for 15 years, it could be that the stock market is less risky than, say, 10-year government bonds. Because stocks, they don't suffer, they can't be destroyed by unexpected inflation. Because think about corporations in the 70s. Any corporation that produces anything. Suppose you have a lot of inflation. Well, that just means when that corporation sells stuff, it's getting 7% more for the goods it sells. When prices go up, corporate profits go up by that amount. And so when you think about risk, you got to look at all the different kinds of risk, and the whole purpose of trying to really make you understand the difference between real and nominal interest rates is so that you're aware of the risk of unexpected inflation, and that you'll be able to plan around it. Any questions about that? Good job. All right, next. This is something I say just... Oh, sorry, we do have one more, number 15. Based on what we've learned now, we can say that if inflation is higher than expected, lenders will blank and borrowers will blank. So if inflation is higher than expected, who benefits and who harms? Remember in the 70s we saw that when you had unexpected inflation, the real interest rate was much lower than what they thought it would be. Is a low interest rate good for lenders or borrowers? Good for somebody. Sorry, don't be mad at me. I'm very sensitive. I'm insecure. Despite my arrogance demeanor. Most of you say that lenders are harmed and borrowers benefit, and you're right. Unexpected inflation and low interest rate. That means if you're saving money and lending it, you're not getting much return for it. But if you're borrowing money, certainly you want a low interest rate. If I change this question, I say, what if inflation is lower than expected? Then you get the opposite answer. When inflation is lower than you expect, then the real interest rate is much higher. Good for lenders, bad for borrowers. We're next going to be getting into a thing called opportunity cost. And I think the best thing to do right now is to just, we're going to be answering some questions, but I think the questions you're going to have to answer anyway. You can start a new section of notes on opportunity costs and write down the answers to the questions. But I'd say just chill out, just watch it. Keep your clickers though, we are going to be answering some questions. Okay. Opportunity cost. Where we're going now, we're going to try to understand prices in society, where they come from, and what changes them. Here's a picture of two people. Which person do you believe is more likely to commit a crime by their appearance alone? Let's look at their appearance. Which one is more likely to commit a crime? What's that? Either one. So why'd y'all say person A? I know you don't want to say it.
She looks like she's scoping someone out to do something bad.
Yeah, she does. She does look mean. That is true.
Having a good life right now.
What if they were both neither smiling nor frowning? I'm trying to make you say something you feel uncomfortable saying.
She's a woman. I still say person.
Now, I said the answer, of course, there's no answer. This is the same person. Y'all probably know. What's the name of the movie with this was Charlize? Y'all? What was it? Monster. She was portraying a real serial killer, I think. And here's the thing. I know that I have beaten the odds in life because score after score of scientific studies have proven that ugly people have a hard time in life. Ugly people have uglier spouses. Their relationships have more trouble. They're more likely to be divorced. They make less money. They have less job opportunities. They have less friends. They're less liked. They make a lot less money. They're going to die sooner. They're going to have more health problems. I'm serious. I'm not being funny. This is real. Well, I am being funny, but I'm not saying that. I'm not saying this just to be funny. Everything I said is real, meaning they found it in studies. And you should feel fortunate. Y'all are the most beautiful class that I've ever seen. So y'all are just going to do well. And ugly people like me, my brother, my father, my sister, my granddad, and my dog, we are far, far more likely to commit a crime than beautiful people. And you can imagine a lot of different reasons why that may be. What do you think they are? What's that? No, say it. You're probably right. I couldn't hear what you said, but you are angry at the world. Yeah, you do get very angry at the world. Something else, too.
Poverty.
What's that?
Poverty.
Honoring?
Poverty.
Poverty.
Oh.
Yeah? You always have a choice, right? If I'm going to commit this crime, it has some kind of benefit, but it's some kind of cost. So if I commit this crime, I'm giving up something. I'm giving up the security of not being caught and put in prison, right? And so if I make this choice to commit a crime, I'm paying a cost. The cost is I give up that opportunity to stay out of jail, for sure, or almost sure. And what is the value of that other opportunity if I'm an ugly, low-paid, twice divorced, single man with no friends, a dog that hates me, and I can't pay my cable bills? Prison may not look that bad, right? What we're going to is this opportunity cost thing. If I do this example, y'all stay away. It's like cursing. You always perk up when you do it. But it is real. This thing called opportunity cost, the value of the next best alternative. So what's the cost of me committing the crime? The cost is the value of that next best alternative. And that's the definition of opportunity cost. Value of the next best alternative. More attractive people have everything better. A crime has benefits. A crime entails costs. Less attractive people have simply less to lose. Their opportunity cost to commit a crime is lower because the value of their non-prison life just isn't as great. It may still be great, but not as great as if they were attractive. So this is one, and there are a lot of economists who study crime and nothing but crime. And this is one thing they're tending to say a lot, that this is one thing that drives crime and explains this relationship between attractiveness and crime. Now let's go to the ancient Romans. We often think, before I learned about this, I might would have said that, well, let me ask the question first. And I'll throw this out there. The cost of being foolish or reckless in war is the life you leave behind if you're defeated, whether killed or defeated and sold into slavery. Who then would Rome want to recruit as its main soldiers, especially the officers? Roman slaves, poor Roman citizens with royal property, or wealthy Romans? This isn't hypothetical, this is a real event. Almost half of you, but most of you did say the wealthy Romans, and you're right. At least in the days of the Roman Republic, before there were Roman emperors, the best way to stay out of a war was to be poor or to be a slave. Because Romans needed brave people. They needed people who would be smart, wouldn't be foolish, wouldn't be reckless. And so they wanted the people who had the most to lose from being defeated. And if you were a wealthy Roman, if you had property, if you had anything to lose, you were going to fight. That was your duty towards Rome. And again, it's opportunity cost, the value of the next best alternative. The opportunity cost of being defeated in war is very high if you have a good life back in Rome. Much like the crime example. I'm going to let you answer for it. Talk about this. We'll start counting now. If you got this wrong, it's probably just because you don't really understand what I'm asking yet. That's true a lot of you. Here's how we think about this. Okay, if you go to Wilco, what is the value of seeing Wilco itself, separate from the price you pay, is $20. But the value of paying to go see Wilco is the value of seeing Wilco minus the price you pay. The value is 20, price is 0. So the value of paying to see Wilco, or the value of going to that concert, is 20. It's $20 to you. You like Panic at the Disco better. You value seeing them at $50, but you have to pay $40 to see them. This means if you do buy a ticket to go see Wilco, the value of that action is the $50 you get from seeing Wilco, personal happiness to you. I'm sorry. The $50 you get from seeing Panic at the Disco, minus the $40 you have to pay, you only benefit by $10. And this is why you see Wilco in the first place. You don't like Wilco as much as Panic, but given the ticket prices, it provides you a much better value. Now, if I ask you what's the cost of going to see Wilco, you're used to thinking of accounting costs, and you're going to say the ticket price was zero. At least that's, if I just ask you what's the cost, that's probably what you'll tell me. But economics, we only care about the cost that guides people's decisions. And the cost that guides people's decisions is opportunity cost. And so this is how we think about it. You go to Wilco. What's the opportunity cost of going to Wilco? The value of the next best alternative. The next best alternative, buying a ticket to see Panic. It's the value of that next best alternative. 50 minus 40, $10. That's why the opportunity cost is $10. Let me bring this to a food example. It is possible, maybe, that if we started banning pesticides, we might save some lives. Might actually kill more people. The ban pesticides, the price of fruit and vegetables goes up. People eat less in fruits and vegetables. Fruit and vegetables help protect you against cancer. It's possible that pesticides actually decrease cancer rates. But let's just leave that to a side. We're trying to think about opportunity costs. You need, if you're going to take public money and use it for the public good, you've got to be able to think about opportunity costs. And this is something that you know anyway, but I'm just helping you understand it in the words that economists use. If we ban all pesticides, it'll cost us in economic dollars about $20 billion, and according to sources I've seen, it'll save you about 20 lives. Well, that seems pretty expensive. And that's because, at least the sources I look at, pesticides as they're regulated are actually quite safe. I know some people disagree with that. That's fine. But suppose I'm right here. Well, that's a lot of money to save 20 lives. There's a lot better way of spending that money to save even more lives. I never heard of this until I was doing some reading where there's a thing called radon. Most people in the Northeast know about this because a lot of houses in the Northeast have basements. And it comes from the ground, and it wants to kill you. It won't, see? Red is bad, it comes in and it kills you. It's like I think it's like radiation from the Earth's core. Does anybody know if that's right? Yeah. Is that what it is?
Well, I mean, basically, like, elements are decomposing, which is then releasing the neutrons, which leads to the radiation.
Okay. You could just say, yes, you're right. I'm just kidding when I do that. See, it keeps people awake. That's the only reason. It's the only reason I'm here. The only reason. Remember that on evaluation. But here's the thing. That $20 billion that we could use to save 20 lives, you could use by radon detectors. So basically where you go into people's homes and say, well, I'd like to test your home for radon. And you have this meter, you go into the basement, and it tells you if radon's getting into the house or not. And if it is, you got to do things to stop it because it's very dangerous. And if we spent $20 billion to test for radon, we'd save like 15,000 lives. So the opportunity cost of banning pesticides is negative, meaning if what we care about, if the only thing we care about is saving lives, there's a lot better way of spending that money. This is our last question. Would you read it, answer it, and talk about it? And I should have talked about that to the man who has a knife where I can, in the front row, where I can see this big knife. He can pull that in. But my opportunity cost is, well, what have I got to lose? See, you can apply economics to all different kinds of things. Very versatile. Here's how you do this. You just got to remember opportunity cost is the value of the next best alternative. If you did not plant cotton, what would you plant? Corn. What is the value of planting corn? Profit you can make, $250. That's all it is. That nice and easy.